Good evening, everyone. Wonderful to see all of you tonight. Let's begin by setting the most excellent motivation in the universe that we've been learning so much about, which is bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And even if this sounds crazy to you, even if this sounds like, oh, me? I'm going to eventually be perfect. I'm eventually going to be the most reliable guide in the universe. Yeah, right. That sounds like something silly for me to think is possible. But when we study more and more and more, we'll become more likely to think that it's possible and become convinced that it's possible. And when we say this, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, it will mean something so much to us, and it will be something that we desire to achieve so greatly that when that kind of idea occurs, when that switch in our mind occurs from a place where it sounds a little silly to where it sounds like something that we would like to do, becoming a Buddha, that switch will take place because of what we're doing now, even if it's in a contrived way. We're setting up the mental basis for that switch to take place where these words mean something to us so that we have a feeling that takes place that connects us to them even more and more and more. And that feeling that takes place will come from this repetition, this familiarization that we're doing here on Thursday nights and hopefully every single day with this idea that, starting with maybe doubt, can I, can't I, I'm not really sure, but maybe I could become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And then you study more and you say, I think that it's possible. And then you start to see the signs that tell you, yes, this is really, really possible. This buildup only occurs, this cognitive transformation only occurs from meeting with accurate information and then really studying it, studying it well and making sure that it's that accurate and complete information that you have to look at so that you can convince yourself that this is a worthwhile endeavor. And then you can convince yourself that not only is this a worthwhile endeavor in terms of making me feel better on a daily basis, it's a worthwhile endeavor because it's more important than anything that I can ever do in my life, because this life will end and then another life will come. And eventually I will have to do these things if I want to be happy and I want to be free from suffering. So here we are doing the things that gets us on the right track, gets us on the track that's heading towards our goals of complete happiness and freedom from suffering. Since beginningless time, we've just been on a track that's not leading to the things that we actually want. It's been leading us to the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, because we're on a track called the pervasive compounded suffering, which is us being forced into among the 4 or 5 aggregates by contaminated karmas, afflictions, and corresponding seeds driven by self-grasping ignorance. And forced means we didn't have a choice, and a lack of choice, a lack of freedom is misery, and this is suffering. So because we haven't figured this out, we're thrust again and again and again into states of suffering, forced, no freedom. Lack of freedom is misery. Because we're on a track, the self-grasping ignorance keeps driving us on. The self-grasping ignorance keeps driving us towards suffering. And if we remove the self-grasping ignorance, this thing that Buddha says is the origin of all of our suffering, that removal of it allows us to no longer experience it. So when we're studying these things, when we're engaging in the practices that will create this eventual separation from the things that cause our suffering, when we're engaging in these things, we're actually moving more and more and more towards that state that we will all achieve. So as we're looking at this thing that causes suffering and we're looking at the self-grasping ignorance and we're seeing that it's driving us again and again and again into cyclic existence, we start to move towards its removal, which starts to turn this train around or turn the car around or jumps it off of the track onto another track, however you want to put it. It's slowly moving it, like, you know how in train tracks there's those things that go and then move you over onto another track. It's like you're getting to this place where that's going to turn you over to the track, you know, of complete happiness all of the time. And it's only going to occur through practices like this, through creating the causes for that result. All results depend upon causes. Results are concordant with their causes. We engage in those things that are like that which we want to have arise, then we will eventually see that these are the conditions that were necessary for the arisal. So here we are today. We have such a great opportunity. We're looking at how to generate bodhicitta currently within the Lam Rim teachings that we're studying. The foundation of all good qualities we're looking at with a magnifying glass. We're currently in the section that says, just like me, you know, I'm thrown in this sea of this suffering life. All of my sentient beings, my mothers, are also thrown into this suffering life, experiencing the 863 types of suffering, experiencing the 110 types of suffering we find in the bodhisattva levels. So we see that just like me, they're experiencing this. May I become a Buddha to free them all. May I take on this task of freeing them all, which only a Buddha is qualified to do. So we're looking at, how would I get a mind that says, may I take on the task of freeing them all? May I become a Buddha so that I can make that happen? May I take this task on? You know, how do we make a mind like mine think like that just takes on the responsibility, like a mother would for her only child, takes on the responsibility for everyone in the universe, every hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, and God in the universe takes on the responsibility, the task of freeing each and every one of them. You know, how do I do that? And luckily we have these illustrious instructions passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni through the Nalanda tradition, and all of these incredible Tibetan commentaries that we have that allow us to kind of turn our minds, you know, towards the way that we want to go. As we're talking about, we're on a track that's just the self-grasping ignorance track, that self-cherishing attitude track that's leading us only to samsara, leading us only to places where we're not experiencing the most amount of happiness. And that's because we've created the causes for that track. And if we undo that by creating the opponent forces, then we're no longer on have the possibility to be forced, you know, by, you know, propelled by, you know, what propels us, which is the self-grasping ignorance, is like the kind of gas that's pushing it, you know, pushing us in a certain direction, and a maniacal driver that's driving us in a certain direction. So here we are, and you know, part of our problem is the self-cherishing attitude. This keeps us from experiencing the most happiness we possibly can experience. And we're learning in great detail how to fix that problem in our mind that makes it so we can experience the most amount of happiness possible. And that's something that most beings in the universe don't get to do. And most beings in the universe, you know, even the ones who come in contact with this tradition, rarely will they actually do more than hear about it. Like Jetsun Milarepa says, you can't just look at food, you have to eat it. You can't just listen to the teachings, you have to apply them. So hopefully we're among the folks that are not only hearing these things, but we're engaging in analysis because we're hearing correct information. I can assure you of that. The amount of commentaries that we're using and reading directly from just show us the depth of this tradition. And we know that we're reading them from authentic authors, you know, qualified authors. So we know that the instructions are complete because they match with what Buddha Shakyamuni said. They're not deviating from what Buddha Shakyamuni said, or what, you know, any of the Indian pandits, if we're relying on Tibetan sources, what they said. So we're seeing like a clean lineage that goes all the way back. And it's this clean lineage of instruction that we get to. We have the privilege of looking at that so many others don't look at. And the ones that do look at it don't do much with it. But we are among those amazing folks that want to do something with it, because I see everyone coming back week after week, and I speak personally with some of you, and I've known many of you for years, and I know where your heart is, and your heart is in wanting to evolve, wanting these teachings to have an impact on your mind. I've seen these teachings have an impact on folks' minds. And yeah, I just rejoice in the fact that you want to get up in the morning and practice these things, that even if you don't, that you want to get up in the morning and do these things, because we're starting to become so convinced of just how amazing the discoveries we will have can be. And as we discover smaller and smaller sections, the beginning sections, we'll see that, yeah, this is reliable information that allows me to discover stuff about myself, about others, about why I suffer, about how to be happy. It allows me to discover these things. And that discovery sinks into my core because it tallies with reality. Because it actually, my mind knows that it makes sense because it's presented in a logical, convincing way. Whereas other things that I chase around to achieve goals of happiness and freedom from suffering, my mind's not really convinced that they will work. They haven't really worked thus far in a complete and satisfactory fashion. And I'm pretty expert at trying to be happy and get rid of suffering. So I've tried things that my mind knows have left me wanting over and over again. And when I apply the teachings that are presented in the Lam Rim that were passed down through the Nalanda tradition from Buddha Shakyamuni, when I hear Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings presented in a way that I can understand them because I'm so dull, I see that this is something that can give me satisfaction and starts to give me glimpses of satisfaction that some of the things I thought would give me the greatest amount of satisfaction have been unable to do, or history has shown that they don't produce the lasting wow that I thought they had the capacity to. Whereas these teachings, after I started to apply them long enough, complete information, accurate information, long enough, the wow related to some of the basic things that I've been able to figure out, basic introductory Buddhism things I've been able to figure out, has lasted and hasn't turned to any state of dissatisfaction within me, because my mind feels light around it, because my mind knows it's accurate. See, this is the thing about analysis. It makes you come to conclusions, whereas most of the stuff that we do in life, we do with a gut instinct. We haven't concluded anything. We have these kind of what we think are correct assumptions, and then we go with it, and we're usually not actually right. But what happens to our mind when we start to apply information and start to have correct signs that we're using to prove these things are accurate, and we discover based on those correct signs that they are accurate, that way of operating in terms of the way our mind operates doesn't have the same rub. And when there's no rub there, the dissatisfaction doesn't occur in the same way. Because when your mind is convinced that me doing this gives me lasting happiness, when you go and try and do the other things, which you've never been convinced will give you lasting happiness, you've just tried it out. You compare, if I'm looking at these these things I've tried out that I thought would give me lasting happiness, even in the midst of it, while I was trying it out, and even in the peak of the happiness that it gave me, there was always a rub in there, just a hum of something that wasn't complete. Whereas I haven't experienced that once I've concluded something with logic and reason that tallies with the reality of a path that leads me to things that actually make me happy and make me not suffer. So this is something that from a personal level that I can say that when I really sit back and I analyze how my mind feels and how I experience my day and how I experience information, and when I come in contact with objects and pay attention to them, how I discriminate them and how then it makes me feel, when I really, really look at how my mind is doing, I don't find anything that allows the lightness to occur that hasn't been concluded beyond a shadow of a doubt by me based on what the Buddha discovered. I was able to discover certain things that seem to make sense in terms of logic and cause and effect that then make me try to lead my life in a certain way. And when I try to lead my life in a certain way that aligns with that, I notice there's not a friction of dissatisfaction. So try it out. See if this is what happens for you. See if you start to notice a friction of dissatisfaction in things other than that which gives rise to the true states of happiness that we're talking about. See if you find a different kind of feeling in like doing something, putting someone else before yourself, not trying to get caught doing it, not bragging about it, like little things like, Arya Nagarjuna, or yeah, I think the great bodhisattvas say begin with giving vegetables, begin with like maybe like trying to give a little bit of like sugar to an ant outside. I don't know what it is that you could do. See how when you're trying to even fake this idea that this is my mother, maybe she would like some sugar, I'm going to repay her kindness. I know it's in a mundane way and you're giving the suffering of change, but see, even with all of those facts on deck, how your mind works like that compared to maybe I should go give something to a being who's in need. Nah, I'm just going to stay and look at my phone. See what happens in your mind. See if there's a kind of a friction that's happening when it seems like you're doing something that would be more fun. You're sitting and you're looking at a phone. Going out and giving some grains of sugar to some ant you don't even know, according to our ignorance, we've forgotten, that doesn't sound fun. But notice how much less friction when you're in the act of doing it. I don't mean getting to it. It's easier to get to your phone and like look at nonsense. I mean, like once you're there doing it, see what the feeling difference is when you're helping, you're in that actual mode of, boy, I hope this being likes this piece of sugar. This is just an idea, an example. I don't know if sugar is good for ants. I think they like it. So anyway, these are the kinds of things that we can do to test this out. This is the acid test. This is the scientific experiment. This isn't meant to be blind faith. We're supposed to test it out. See if when I'm just even acting in a way that tallies with what the Buddha says leads me to liberation, leads me to complete Buddhahood. When I'm performing in this way, not getting to it. I mean, when I'm performing in this way, how does it feel versus performing in a way that's closed in and just thinking about my own needs? So we start with things like little experiments like that to get to know who we really are, because we'll come to find that there's something that happens in terms of the way we discriminate things, that we have more of a tendency to find virtue is like, oh God, it's so hard to go do that. And non-virtue, it's so easy to go do that. But once we start to really, really learn about karma and its results, and we start to see test the things out, like I was just saying. Our discrimination will change, and it'll be like going to the playground as a child to engage in virtue. And it'll be like having to go to detention or, getting a spanking, the feeling in your mind when you're about to engage in non-virtue. And the only thing that will be different is that you come in contact with like information that's accurate, and you pay attention to it, and then like your discrimination, because of the sophistication of the information that you're putting into your mind, and you're thinking broader, that sophistication of the information that's much more broader than your little small amount of thinking allows your discrimination of circumstances and what I should and shouldn't do change, and the way that like you feel about doing it's going to change. So your intention, you'll move towards doing virtuous things because of that. So you discriminate it differently. You're saying it as something, oh, that makes me, that's something good. That's something that's good. I've come in contact with this information. That's something good. And I'm going to feel a way about it that is good, which will make me move towards doing more and more and more of it. So basically, that's how we'll see our minds working when we, start to make our hardware, as Geshe Dorji Damdul says, more sophisticated, so that this software we're trying to put in of the Dharma actually is able to work and produce such grand effects. So may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Now imagine that all of the highly enlightened beings are in the space in front of us. Imagine that they're looking into our eyes with immense love and compassion. Any being you consider an enlightened being who's removed the things that we need to remove in order to achieve the goals that we want. Those enlightened beings who remove the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience and have achieved the goals that we want, achieve the goals of complete freedom from suffering, and immense, the highest amount of happiness possible. So those beings are our role models. Those beings are kind of indicators of our own potential. So we're looking at the refuge field. We're looking at these great beings, not as, like people we idolize, in the sense that we don't really believe we could ever be as good as them. It's an idol in the sense, idolization, if you can think of it in the terms of, like a role model, who shows you that you can become the most perfect, happy, kind being on the face of the earth because you have a mind that is, at this point, impure. They have a mind at this point that's pure, but those beings in the space in front of us at one point in time had a mind just like ours that was impure. And in dependence upon what we're talking about this evening, achieve the state of being our refuge, being beings who've achieved the state that we want to achieve, complete freedom from suffering, and the most infinite, highest amount of happiness, bliss, whatever you want to call it, available to a mind. That's it. They've figured out a way, those beings, those boys and girls, have figured out a way to achieve from the place that we are all the things that we want that we never get. Wouldn't it make sense to then say, this is the being I always want to rely upon, because this is a being who can tell me how to get exactly what I've always wanted and never gotten? Really that simple. Why are they reliable for me? Well, because they were just like me. We see in the Pramana Samuchaya by Acharya Dignaga, the one who transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sugata and protector. To you, I make prostrations. It doesn't say the one who was always a reliable guide. It says the one who transformed into the reliable guide. We will transform into the reliable guide. How did Buddha transform into the reliable guide? Well, by practicing what we're learning to practice, motivated by altruism. We're learning how to get altruism. We will be motivated by altruism. Altruism is the sixth step, the one that we're going to learn after great compassion. We'll learn how to get that motivation. With that motivation, and with certain steps related to the nature of reality, we can transform into reliable guides ourselves. And this is why Acharya Dharmakirti in the Pramanavartika Karika wrote hundreds, couple of hundred plus stanzas about that one stanza that Acharya Dignaga wrote, because he found it so profound to show how the Buddha went from a mind like ours, then was motivated by compassion, and then able by being motivated by compassion to engage in a path, the path of realizing emptiness that made him the teacher. And through this compassion and the union of method and wisdom, became the Sugata, the one gone to bliss. Gone, meaning the bliss will never end. And because he, or she in some cases, he in the case of Buddha Shakyamuni, knows how to do this, he's our protector. The protector can protect us from the suffering of change, the pervasive compounded suffering that we're learning is what we are thinking about when we think about compassion. Sentient beings experiencing among the three types of suffering. The Buddha knows how to make the three types of suffering stop for you and I. Therefore, he is a protector, but wasn't always a protector, just like we're not protectors. The Buddha transformed into a protector. You don't transform into a protector unless it's motivated by compassion. You wouldn't want to protect anyone if you didn't have compassion. Compassion's important at the beginning, the middle, and the end, as Acharya Chandrakirti says in the Madhyamika Avatara, as we just learned. So those beings are here. And now we've said, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Now let's imagine that all sentient beings are our guests. We've been practicing the 7-point cause and effect. We've realized and learned how to invite sentient beings, how to think about sentient beings in terms of equanimity, thinking about sentient beings in terms of neutrals, friends, and then difficult people or enemies, creating this equal ground. And then the other practices, then starting with those who are close to us and then moving on to strangers and those who are difficult people. So imagine that you invite all sentient beings here to be your guest, setting up this mental basis, leaving in these imprints, even if this is contrived. Remember what we said at the beginning. The more we familiarize our mind with the results that we want to achieve, it sets up the condition and the mental basis for us to be able to build upon it and become closer and closer and closer to the being who can actually do things like this, who can actually reach all sentient beings. And in Kamala Shila's stages of meditation, we know that it says it's so important for us to start with beings we actually know, and so that our mind has a real reaction to them, so that we can see where we're really at, where we can see if we're like finding some people way too close and trying to find some people way too far and some people somewhere in the middle. We have to have this non-biased, equal love and compassion for every single sentient being, friends, enemies, and neutrals. And doing practices like this is our gauge to see how we're doing in our daily practice related to the 7-point cause and effect and the equalizing and exchanging self with others, which will eventually turn us into bodhisattvas, where our minds will only think of helping others. That's all we'll think about. And this will give us the most amount of happiness. Hearing help me will give us the most amount of joy, not going and getting, something materially fancy. That won't be the thing that gives us joy. The thing that'll give us joy is hearing someone say, help me, and then going to do so. Wow. So we're really, really lucky that we have a chance to learn how to become bodhisattvas. because of the kindness of all of these great masters. So imagine that you invite all sentient beings here. And then once you've finished with those beings that you know that you can relate to, those friends, those people who are the closest to you, starting with your mother or whoever took care of you when you were vulnerable, and then moving out to strangers, those folks that you see, you don't really know who they are, birds that fly by, as we say sometimes, some strangers that you've seen, you may even be able to picture them. You don't have a clue who they are. Oh, that guy who's always, riding his bike in the morning down the road. Strangers. And then moving on to those difficult people, you know who they are. And in this instruction, we're learning a really secret, special technique that we'll get into, where before we start the meditation on compassion, we actually think about beings who are doing bad stuff, and recognize that they're like, a sheep headed to slaughter, and then moving on to our mothers. But we'll read more about that as we get into it. So we'll invite all of those beings, and then all of the hell-hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods, inviting them to be our guests, to listen to this instruction on the Lam Rim, and imagine that they're experiencing the same thing that you're imagining that you're experiencing. And that's just like an immense amount of comfort and security, no loneliness, because you know that the merit field is always here with you. When you invite these holy beings, they come because of the omniscience and the compassion in their minds. We just have karmic obstacles and don't see them. So whenever we're doing a practice, we should always feel this kind of warmth of the embrace of these beings who are unlike others in terms of their caring for us, in terms of their putting our needs before their own. They're unlike other beings. And just having a being in your presence like that, if any of you have ever had the great fortune of being around a Lama who cares for you, you know exactly what I mean. Yeah. So imagine that feeling that you may have had, or just think about the one I'm talking about. Think about that feeling, what that could be like if you haven't had it, what it might be like. And then just imagine that all of the beings that you've invited get to experience that too. Because you want everyone to feel good, and you want to feel good. Everyone wants to feel good. Imagine that they're not having to worry for a moment, that this compassion that you're generating in whatever way you can is somehow creating this blessing for them to be able to just for a moment not have to suffer the heat and the cold and the torture of the hells, not have to suffer the hunger and thirst in the hungry ghost realm, or the fears in the animal realm, and just the enslavement in the animal realm. In the human realm, all of the things we know we suffer, and the jealousy in the demigods realm, and in the gods realm, the dissatisfaction that occurs when looking over at those with better things, the anxiety that actually occurs in a god's mind. Who could have imagined this would occur? Or the just absolute terror that occurs as a god is dying. Those kinds of things. Out of the immense blessing of our compassion, imagine that all of the sentient beings that we invite here aren't experiencing among those different types of suffering that I just mentioned. And those are only a few of the potential sufferings that the innumerable amount of sentient beings in the universe are experiencing every moment. So with that being said, we'll recite the Heart Sutra. Imagine that the space in front of you is transformed into Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, where the truth of suchness was taught, and by Lord Buddha. Lord Buddha, imagine in the space in front of you, and imagine Venerable Shariputra and Noble Avalokiteshvara, Lord Chen Rezig, in the space in front of you. And Buddha Shakyamuni blesses the minds of Venerable Shariputra and Lord Chen Rezig. And then they begin to speak for the Buddha. It's really the Buddha's mind that's making them speak, but that they begin to speak for the Buddha. The Buddha goes into meditation on emptiness, and then engages in this activity simultaneously. And this shows the greatness of the Buddha, because the Buddha can meditate single-pointedly on emptiness, realize the ultimate truth, and with that ultimate analysis, realize the conventional truth. And he's the only being in the universe that can do that. And in the Heart Sutra, we see the magnificent quality of the Buddha being expressed right in the beginning, where it says that then the Blessed One enters the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And then, so you see here, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas were empty of nature. So we see that there's this blessing. It says, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra says to noble Avalokiteshvara. So it's here, the power of the Buddha's doing something. So through the power of the Buddha's blessing the mind of Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, this sutra is pronounced. So here, again, I want to distinguish this quality that a Buddha has that no one else has, the ability to enter into the samadhi that is the, ultimate analysis, the direct realization of emptiness. So that direct realization of emptiness that is done by the, rational mind or the ultimate mind. Then for a Buddha, for everyone that's not a Buddha, they can only do that. And then moving out from that direct perception of emptiness, everything then again appears as intrinsically existent, and he or she is unable to directly perceive emptiness at that time. Whereas a Buddha directly perceives emptiness at all times, perceives the one nature of all entities, all phenomena. All phenomena have two natures. Everyone but a Buddha can only directly realize one or the other at any given time. So all phenomena have two natures, and the Buddha can directly see, realize emptiness, the ultimate nature of phenomena, the emptiness of inherent existence, and the conventional truth. So the ultimate truth and the conventional truth can be simultaneously cognized. So here in the beginning of the sutra, we see that excellent quality hidden in there, that if you didn't know that was an excellent quality of the Buddha, that they could directly perceive emptiness and do stuff at the same time, you wouldn't see how profound this is. But knowing that the Buddha can directly perceive emptiness and do stuff at the same time, you see he's directly perceiving emptiness and puppeteering. So it's a kind of cool aspect we've mentioned before about this sutra that I wanted to share with you. And the sutra teaches that nothing in the universe has intrinsic existence, has inherent existence. This is the definitive teaching. When we look at the interpretable and definitive teachings, we see that the first and the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, so the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, and then the wheel of good differentiation or the interpretation, good interpretation during the third noble truth. These two turnings of the wheel of Dharma, we say, are interpretable, but the definitive teaching according to Madhyamaka Prasangika is the second turning of the wheel of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the 100,000 verse, the 25 or 20,000 verse, 8,000 verse, the Heart Sutra, and then the smallest sutra, so we see that all of these ranging sizes of sutras were to pronounce one specific thing, and that's the emptiness of intrinsic existence of all phenomena. And then hidden within it, within this incredible sutra, we find the actual ripening paths that are necessary, hidden within it. And then we find the actual paths of realizing emptiness that a bodhisattva goes through. There's various ripening and liberating paths that occur after one becomes a bodhisattva. He or she engages in the collection of merit and engages in method and then engages in wisdom. And all of this is for the sake of realizing emptiness as a bodhisattva again and again and again, to eventually you become a Buddha. So we find hidden within this sutra the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning, which are actually the conventional paths that one goes through. in order to become a Buddha. You know, all of the things that one goes through, the realizations of emptiness that happen on the path, conceptual realizations of emptiness that happen at least by the path of accumulation and then the path of preparation, the various stages of conceptual realization, and then the direct perception of emptiness that happens on the path of seeing, and then again and again and again through the path of meditation to the path of Buddhahood, which is no more learning. So all of that, when you get a good commentary like Jayan Gapi Lodru's commentary on the Heart Sutra, you'll find is in here. It's just for sharper folks to know what's in here. And then they write stuff and then can help duller folks like me understand what's in here. So then let's go. Imagining all sentient beings are here with you. You're leading them in this recitation of the Heart Sutra. And that, that just imagine that you're actually there and that these beings motivated by altruism are in front of you, and that they're the Buddha, motivated by great compassion to help every single sentient being in the universe, came to tell us in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain exactly what we need to know that we never have known before about everything in the universe, and something that we need to check in our minds that we've never checked before. And that's how things naturally appear to us. And do they naturally appear to us like they're merely imputed in dependence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation? Are things just appearing to us in that way, just merely imputed as mere projections? Or do they seem to have some inherent existence? And when we analyze our own minds, we'll see that they seem to have some kind of inherent existence, some existence from their own side. And when we read the Heart Sutra, the Buddha is saying that they don't. They exist, but they don't exist the way that we think that they do. We exist the way that I'm saying, hey, do they seem to appear as projections from your mind, or do they, in terms of their dependent origination, or do they seem like something that's separate, that is existent, substantially existent, separate from mere imputation? And if they appear separate, then that's an error the Buddha's come to tell us, which is the cause of all of our suffering. So the cause of all of our suffering is this error that naturally occurs to us. We naturally have an appearance of these things having an existence or a mode of existence that they don't. And then we just naturally, innately apprehend them. We kind of just say, yeah, we fall into what's appearing to us, and we fall into the trap of appearance, and we just say, yes, I apprehend this thing exists from its own side. We're just trapped by this misconception. And this is the mode of existence that we think things have. But the Buddha says, no, they don't. There's no I that here has a mode of existence from its own side, or ear, or nose, or tongue, or body, or mind, or speech, or sound, or smell, or suffering, or origin of suffering, or cessation of suffering, or path. None of those things have an existence, a mode of existence that you think that they do. They don't. They don't. They don't. No, not that either. No, not that either. No, not that either. But that doesn't mean that they have no mode of existence. And this is where people get emptiness wrong. It doesn't mean that things are empty of themselves. It doesn't mean that I is empty of itself. It means that I is empty of intrinsic existence. I is not empty of mere imputation. I exists in the correct mode is mere imputation. So mere imputation for Arya Nagarjuna, independence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation, and the designated object and the basis of designation are mutually exclusive. Just that mere imputation is enough for Madhyamaka Prasangika to posit existence and posit cause and effect. And this is what we have to come to learn if we want to stop suffering. we must come to figure out what is wrong with all of our perceptions, all of our appearances, all of our apprehensions, and then figure out how to apply the opposite of what's wrong, which is what's right. And the more we apply what's right slowly, like that, train track that switches over to the right track, our mind can switch over to the right track. And that's the track of not grasping at things as truly existent. Eventually we could, through this conceptual understanding, have a direct realization. We'll be able to see emptiness. And then we'll no longer be on a track that's creating more samsara once we see emptiness directly. We no longer create karma that will throw us into samsara. We have some left over we got to fix still. That's why we need to keep seeing emptiness, but we'll no longer create we'll hop over onto a track that only leads towards liberation. So this is what's amazing about this, is that we can logically posit all of these things. We're not looking to just say that there's some pie in the sky, some idea that there's some big guy with a beard in the sky looking out for us, that we don't have any real responsibility in the formula. We come to logically find out that we have the only responsibility in the formula, and that if we fix our side of the formula, then the things that we really want to have occur in terms of experience will occur. The problem with it is the experience that we're craving, we don't have any of the causes for it. We're doing everything that we can to not experience it. And as soon as we start to turn our minds towards this idea that there's no intrinsic eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, start to learn what that means, start to loosen our grasping at things as having an intrinsic existence, and then based on that, an intrinsic disgustingness or greatness, that loosening starts to occur. And then we start to move towards that place where we can jump over to a track because we directly see what we've conceptually realized, and will never, ever, ever create that which gives rise to what we don't want again. Yeah. So the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once, the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma, calm, profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, conscious, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering of no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajaparamita fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way, Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi, praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. And here again, you see that after this, after the mantra, the Buddha rises from his samadhi. So it says he goes into samadhi and then arises from samadhi. But in the middle of this, while he's in samadhi, through his power, he has Venerable Shariputra and Lord Chenrezig doing stuff. So again, the indicator that the Buddha can operate at a conventional and can realize conventional truth and ultimate truth simultaneously. Pretty neat, huh? It's a good trick. Kala jube ne jo damba ne ngu she de ju ngai de do jen de ba bo la ma yi bu jin zi ne song gan do so la ja ze lo. Agha samara ja jandara samara ya be agha samara ja jandara agha samara ja. Agha samara jajandara samara ya me de ya dong gate bara sanga de badi zo ha baba ganja sanji ga e den be doji she la badaji me badaji she wadaji dagi baje me de be she dan ji she den ga ye zo ha Kirin jan ja ji ji shi wa dan mi tu ni be jan dan de wa dan dong ba jan jin bon song so ji da ji de jan den da de le sho. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Jodan Zoji Jodan La Shanjo Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Jibe Sonanji Dula Benje Sanje Dubar Jo Sanje Jodan Zoji Jodan La Shanjo Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Jibe Sonanji Dula Benje Jeju Basho Sanje Jodan Zoji Jodan La Shanjo Badu if you're attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. And if there is grasping, you do not have the view. That's from Sachin Kunga Nipo's Parting from the Four Attachments. So we'll read the source of all my good, and then we'll get into the discussion about it. We'll quickly read it. Again, the four different categories of the source of all my good. First, how to find a Lama and what to do in relation to the Lama. Second, once you found a Lama, what to do. And we see that we have like take advantage of this life and engage in the practice of the practices for beings of three capacities. And then we find a supplication that, you know, during this life, there's no obstacles, and we have our friends, our spiritual friends, and our good, you know, when we say spiritual friend, meaning good friends that practice the spiritual path, as well as teachers, those can be called spiritual friends too. Gets a little bit confusing. Religious friends, Juji Trobo, Chu Trobo, and Gewe Shenyan. It's similar. So, you know, good friends, and that you're teachers, and you know, you're in this life, you don't have obstacles, and then in all of your future lives is. So that's category 3, and then category 4, and then all of our future lives, may we never be separated from holy lamas and be able to achieve all of the goals and all of the levels of each and every path that are found in the Lam Rim. So these are the 4 categories that Pabonko Rinpoche sets forth in his short commentary on the foundation of all good qualities. Foundation of all good qualities, or the source of all my good. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and have me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They can't be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, every man, my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I'm not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well the path shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then to always keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me now that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. Yeah. So nice to see all of you. So we've been looking at, how we enter into the great scope, the teachings for beings of 3 capacities, teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity. We've studied and studied and studied this. And supposedly in terms of path, we've realized these things. And then we then move on to how do we enter into the teachings for beings of great capacity? The entrance into the teachings for beings of great capacity is bodhicitta, because it's the Mahayana. The entrance into the Mahayana is bodhicitta. How do we get bodhicitta? We've been looking at exactly how to do that without any error in the conversation about how to do that. And we've been looking at the topic of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We've gone through the pre-step of equanimity and the first 4 steps. The first 4 steps we finished, which is recognizing beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and then love through the force of attraction. We've gotten through all of these stages and we've landed on great compassion. And we've almost finished our presentation on great compassion that we're going to be going over by looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, Pabonka Rinpoche's liberation in the palm of your hand, looking at actually the 5th Dalai Lama's Ngawan Lobsang Gyatso's, words of Manjushri, and then looking at the Pension Losang Chuji Jetsun's easy path and Pension Losang Yeshe's swift path, which we're going to look at today. So we've been really trying to do a good job at learning how to meditate upon great compassion. We haven't been leaving anything out. So last week we were looking at Penchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's easy path and comparing it to how Pabonka Rinpoche sets us up to meditate upon great compassion and shows a little bit different pre-step even within this great compassion than we would normally see. Normally, we would move our minds just to our mothers and think about them experiencing among the 3 types of suffering and then move out to strangers and then to difficult beings. But there's this pre-step of getting into your mind a horrific kind of experience that you're seeing so that you generate compassion in the way that at your level or at my level that we normally would. So it starts out with us watching an animal be slaughtered and seeing how your mind wants to have that being not have the suffering. And so we'll read through this part in Pabonka Rinpoche's section. And I'm going to just read it through to the end because I think we did a good job at seeing how first you according to the Pension Lamas, you see sentient beings who are in despair. And this makes you, in your meditation, this makes your mind start to get in the mode of compassion, in the mode of a mother whose only child is suffering and she jumps to help it. We're not used to having this feeling, in relation, this feeling come about that can then be applied to every being in the universe, even someone driving a Maserati. You're going to feel like that they're that sheep being slaughtered. So it's pretty amazing that you'll have an intense feel eventually. When you start out as a beginner, you use this example of like, like we're going to read it. It's very graphic, and it's even more graphic in Zapatu Rinpoche's words of my perfect teacher, even more graphic. And it's so that we, in our own kind of way, can generate this feeling of wanting to do something for another being that will eventually not require, because we'll understand suffering more, us to think of something like that. We'll see the suffering of change, which is someone just won the lottery, and that feeling that we're having about a sheep thrown upside down and being slaughtered won't be any different. Wow. So here we're going to see what our mind would feel like if it was moving towards wanting something to be free from suffering. And then it gets us, then there's a very like really secret instruction in here that says, then think about people who are like, then think about the sheep that are about to be slaughtered, and then think about bad people that normally we like, we aren't usually bringing first in our meditation. We're bringing people we love. Think about horrible people. And we've already decided they're our mothers in the meditation. If we've been doing this right, all sentient beings are our mother, remember their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness. We already love them. We already want them to have happiness. We are already say your bad behavior isn't enough for me to say, I don't love you. I love you. I want you to have happiness and the causes of happiness. So when we meditate on this way, we're doing all these levels of checking in our mind. We're bringing up what compassion would really be like. We're seeing if we really believe these beings are our mothers. And we're recognizing that these beings who are doing bad things are like the sheep that are just about to be slaughtered. And they think they're doing all of this great stuff, but they're about to have to experience something that's horrible. And they're just our own mothers who have lost their minds in the moment. These are very powerful things. If we can start to think like this will change everything. If you think, okay, so I'm going to read this again, and I'm going to read it all the way to the end, and I won't give any commentary. I want to make sure we get it. So it said, for instance, if you were a mother and a child were to fall into a fire pit, his mother and father would immediately do whatever was necessary to get him out. Other family members might not act as quickly. The reason for this is that the parents have stronger compassion for the child than others do. So the parents will obviously, we see this, they'll do things for a kid that no one else on the face of the planet would ever do. Okay, so then it says, how do we meditate on compassion? So here, let's take ourselves through this. Then next week, we'll finish off. We'll read the Swift Path, and we'll do the actual meditation that Panchen Losang Yeshe, the fifth Panchen Lama or second Panchen Lama, depending on how you're counting, goes through. And it's actually more extensive than the meditation that the first Panchen Lama, Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsen, does. So I think it'll be more appropriate and a more thorough meditation, and it's integrated with the, the tantric path, because that's how the Panchen Lamas write. So I think that you'll enjoy it. So let me read this without further ado. First, visualize the image of a sheep that is in the process of being slaughtered by a butcher. Imagine that the animal has been forced onto its back as if the sky and earth had suddenly changed places. Picture that the sheep's legs are bound with a cord, and that it's struggling in vain to free itself. It realizes clearly that it's about to lose its life. There's no way it could possibly escape by running away. Lacking anyone who might protect or rescue it, its eyes well up with tears, and it stares helplessly at the butcher's face. Having been driven to this terrible state of fear and anguish, imagine how finally the sheep is put to death by the various cruel methods used in slaughtering it. If you should actually witness the killing of a sheep in this way, you might think to yourself, I doubt that this sheep understands what's happening. But then consider the story of a butcher who was once slaughtering many sheep. After having killed a few, he was tying up the next one to get it ready for slaughtering. And meanwhile, he left his knife lying next to another sheep while the butcher occupied a short distance away. The sheep tried to hide the knife. So there is no question that these animals experience unbearable great fear and suffering. So the sheep sees its fate ahead of it. So, think about it. An animal is just like you, wanting happiness and not wanting suffering and having experiences. And no matter how dulled they are, they see the person that they were so close to, their best friend in the pasture, in front of them, having their head smashed or throat slit, whatever it is they do. Maybe they bleed them out first. I don't know, something disgusting. They see that in front of them. And then that fear, it's like the God knowing that he or she is about to go to a lower realm. This animal knows that he or she is about to be killed. It says it now turn your attention to the sheep that haven't gone to the slaughterhouse yet, still grazing in a mountain pasture. Consider how the only difference between them and the ones that had already met the horrible fate just described is that their time hasn't come. But when it does, they too will surely meet the same end. After reflecting in this way, generate compassion towards these animals by recalling how they have been your very own mother in past lives. So don't forget, these beings were your mother in past lives. Don't forget, you've meditated on this, these 4 steps before. You know this. When you have developed genuine compassion towards these sentient beings, the next step is to reflect how they had to experience suffering in the lower states in the past and how they continue to experience it now. This is done the same way that you contemplated suffering of the lower realms in relation to yourself. Continue developing compassion as you meditate, for instance, on how some of these mothers must live in hells, where they're roasted on a ground of hot iron and boiled in molten iron. Reflect on how others are born as hungry ghosts and must suffer torment and hunger and thirst. So you start thinking about the horrific sufferings of samsara. So sentient beings who are in despair. It says in the Pension Lama text that you're reflecting on sentient beings who are in despair. And then the next is you're reflecting on sentient beings who are unruly, who are evildoers, is the correct translation. So it says, when you have succeeded in generating compassion in this way, next turn your attention to those human beings of the world who are quick to do evil deeds. Contemplate how just as there is very little difference between a sheep that's actually being slaughtered and those that are still grazing on a mountain, human beings that commit evil are no different from those sentient beings who are already dwelling in the lower states, since they themselves are certain to fall into the lower states as well. After that, meditate on your mother in this life. Generate compassion towards her by contemplating how she performs the causes that will bring her suffering in the future. Then reflect on how other family members, your friends, and others devote themselves exclusively to bad deeds and moral transgressions in the course of pursuing their livelihoods. Reflect how, even as they endure the 3 kinds of suffering here in this level of the higher states, they are actively pursuing the causes that in the future will force them to experience the much greater sufferings of the lower states. We know Arya Davis 400 verses says that human beings, for the most part, are involved in ignoble things. That is the reason that most ordinary beings go to the lower realms. After that, contemplate how all sentient beings are continually experiencing suffering and engaging in the causes that will bring more suffering. And this way, generate the great compassion in which you afflict and reflect to yourself. If only all these mother sentient beings could become free of their suffering and the causes of suffering, I vow personally to make sure that they become free of them. You should take special care to meditate in this way on those beings towards whom it is particularly difficult to develop compassion. For instance, if you have difficulty generating compassion towards Brahma, like high gods and other such beings, the way to develop it is by reflecting on the points that were explained during the topics for persons of small and medium capacity. In medium capacity, it says specifically here, because this is where you hear about the suffering of the higher realms. It's so important to understand the small and medium scope. This is why they're the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. The great scope doesn't work unless you have the small and medium scope. There is a measure or sign by which we can recognize that we have truly developed great compassion. It is reached when our desire to free all sentient beings from suffering, even while we are eating food or having something to drink, is as strong as the feeling a mother has towards her dear child while he is suffering or she is suffering from a grave illness. So you're enjoying yourself having a meal, enjoying yourself having a drink, and you have this feeling like a mother has for her only child that wants to free them from suffering. Yeah, even when distracted, the bodhisattva is working for the sake of sentient beings, it says. Wow. One form of compassion is an attitude in which a person merely wishes that beings should be free from suffering. This type of compassion is also practiced by the listeners in solitary realizer vehicles. That's the individual liberation vehicle, technically in the text called Hinayana. So in the Hinayana vehicle, there is compassion. There is immeasurable compassion, but there isn't great compassion. So just a compassion that says, may they be free from suffering, is found in the medium scope teachings, in the individual liberation vehicle, in the Theravada vehicle. But however, we must develop compassion that is unique to the Mahayana tradition. This is an attitude in which a person feels that he must or she must be the one who saves beings from their suffering. And difficult though it may be, we must strive with great effort to achieve this kind of a mind. If we see someone who is suffering from an illness that we ourselves have experienced in the past, our experience serves as the basis for generating compassion towards that person. Similarly, those practitioners who meditate earnestly on the topics for persons of lesser and medium capacity will have reflected on the suffering of lower states in samsara as it relates to themselves. This will make it easy for them to develop compassion towards others. So we see this prerequisite of understanding your suffering, understanding how suffering comes about, the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 3 sufferings, how this comes about, the 110 sufferings, the 2 divisions of 55. How do these come about? What are they? Yeah. This is going to make it easier for you to develop compassion. Both the loving kindness that cherishes sentient beings and regards them as precious and dear, and the loving kindness that wants sentient beings to meet with happiness are forms of loving kindness. However, there is a slight difference between the two in that the former is a particular kind of loving kindness, while the latter possesses the general characteristic that is common to all forms of loving kindness. Now, the loving kindness that regards sentient beings as dear is developed by practicing the 3 topics of recognizing all sentient beings as our mothers, recalling their kindness, and developing the wish to repay their kindness. The first among the 6 steps of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. There's an equanimity pre-step that doesn't count. Then there's 6 causes, which are in this 7-point cause and effect. 6 causes, 1 effect. And it says the way that we develop loving kindness is by meditating on the first 3 causes, recognizing sentient beings as our mothers, recalling their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness. It is also the attitude that enables us to generate great compassion. Therefore, we must meditate on that special form of loving kindness before we attempt to develop great compassion. On the other hand, the general form of loving kindness, namely the attitude that wants sentient beings to meet with happiness, is not a necessary cause for developing compassion in a general form, and it does not have to be cultivated before it. And then it says, Chapje Rinpoche continued this section by making the following points. The great stages of the path states that the place to meditate on loving kindness that wants sentient beings to meet with happiness is right after practicing the topic of wishing to repay the kindness of one's mothers. Because of this, some teachers hold it that it is proper to meditate on this form of loving kindness prior to cultivating compassion. But there's another position that's expressed in the oral instruction. And in the oral instruction, they show how to combine the 7-point cause and effect in equalizing and exchanging self with others. And in that, when we do tonglen, giving and taking practice, even though it's in the order called giving and taking, we actually do taking first, which is compassion, and then giving, which is love. So it's a different order. So some of the oral tradition that combines the 2 practices shows the cultivation of compassion before love. But other traditions say that you've already meditated on this 7-point cause and effect kind of as a prerequisite. And then other traditions say they can be 2 separate practices. So you have to just see what works for you. As the 5th Dalai Lama, the great 5th, Ngawan Losang Gyatso says, people have different affinities. Their minds work differently. See what works for you. It should, so it says, following that instruction, the main place to cultivate the general loving kindness that wants sentient beings to meet with happiness is right here. But the position expressed, let me read the whole thing, but the position expressed in oral traditions on how to meditate on these topics is that loving kindness that wants sentient beings to meet with happiness should be meditated on after we have meditated on compassion. Following that, we should undertake develop the extraordinary intention. So either way, we look at the eighth step of the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice, or the sixth step of the 7-point cause and effect. Both of those are the extraordinary attitude, or it's called that here, but also it's translated as altruism. So either way, you land on altruism that then makes you realize you have to become a Buddha to succeed in the things you want to do. So anyway, wow. So that was Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in Our Hands. This is the Great Lotsawa Art Engels translation. It's in 3 volumes. This is the 3rd volume, and we're so fortunate to have it. So just in summary, we've looked at, we'll do the practice next week. Just in summary, we've looked at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically the section on great compassion related to the 7-point cause and effect instruction for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. We've learned that when we look at great compassion has an object. Great compassion has a subjective aspect. The object is sentient beings who are enduring among the 3 types of suffering: suffering of change, suffering of suffering, pervasive compounded suffering. And we know within those sufferings, we can also find the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, 110 sufferings. So sentient beings who are undergoing that stuff. And the subjective aspect is a mind that's wishing that they be free from those various types of suffering, and then wanting to be the cause for that. So we learned that about it. We learned that Master Kamala Shila says we should really use real beings. We shouldn't meditate using beings that are unconnected to us first. We can do that at the end and then the rest of all sentient beings are in our meditation. But first we start with real beings. And then we consider how they're experiencing the suffering in cyclic existence. And we learn this special instruction about thinking about a real horrific form of suffering, and then thinking about, beings who are doing bad things, who are about to experience horrific forms of suffering, and then moving on to beings who we're close to, and then those who are neutral, and then beings who we hold as difficult beings. And when we have this feeling that we spontaneously want to completely eliminate the suffering of every one of those different types of beings just mentioned, friends, enemies, neutrals, and all other sentient beings, when we have a spontaneous feeling that we want to completely eliminate the suffering of every being without bias in the universe, the way that a mother would want to remove the suffering of her only child, then we know that this practice has reached its ripening. It's worked, and now it's going to force us to have altruism. So when we have this, spontaneous feeling of compassion towards everyone in the universe, then that spontaneous great compassion, this unbiased, spontaneous great compassion that says, I want to be a cause for this, makes us say, I will take it upon myself, the task of bringing everyone to a state of freedom from suffering and ultimate happiness. I can't do it. I must become a Buddha. So we see how that the 5th step, if I want them to be free from suffering, and then the 6th step, I'm going to do it myself, leads you to, I can't do it. I must become a Buddha. That's it. Okay, so that's what we've been trying to learn how to do. And hopefully it's affecting your mind. It's having every day that I practice it, making my mind believe in this a little bit more. And I hope that you're practicing this. I hope that you're not just like looking at food. I hope you're eating food. I hope that you're not just hearing teachings. I hope you're practicing teachings, because you're never, ever going to cure your hunger by looking at food. Likewise, you're never, ever going to cure your suffering and your lack of happiness by just hearing teachings. You have to apply these things to your mind and make your mind slowly turn and slowly start to operate the way that these books say is the right way for a mind to work for a being who wants to be happy. Okay, so we'll do the concluding prayers, and I just want to thank you for coming week after week to hear these instructions, and I hope that they're sinking in, meaning that you're figuring out how to sink in to your mind, or to the eye, if you will, according to Prasangika, a virtuous imprint, a virtuous action, meaning an imprint, meaning leaving something that you've done that is there as a potential, just lying in wait, as moments go by since you did the act, to produce some sort of a result at some sort of time, and figure out how to make sure that those things that are going to happen because of now are the things that you want to have happen. Okay. I guess we don't do refuge last. We do concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land. Offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by this Vajrasattva mantra. Om Benza Sato, Samayam and Balai Benza Sato, Sino Pachita, Tila Meva Vazuka, Meva Zuka, Meva, Meva Zavasi, Meva Sava comes to Jamaican, Yamshin Guru, Bhagavan, Benza Baba, Maha Samaya Sapa, Om Ve. May we always be protected by Paul and Lama. Jorama, 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 Tunjo Kalarachamo. Rama Vaja Daja Tunjo, Ruda Ruda Honjo. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase forevermore. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and help for beings, all powerful Avalokiteshvara Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara's end. And a prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, 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 Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling jewels is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you. Place the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like a teacher who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. The spiritual realizations are not transferred to them as by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts in crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Imagine if all the beings in the world suddenly had the realization of His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche. Just like this, they suddenly had the same kind of mental state as these amazing holy beings who we have had in our world and have in our world. All the horrifying situations in the world would immediately stop, and everyone would just feel so protected and loved. Thank you. May this become, through this virtuous action that we're all engaging in, may this become so. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Unless we don't, because all composite things are impermanent.